Good morning, everyone. I'm Rebecca Vickers, and on behalf of the Florida Alcohol and Drug Abuse Association, welcome to today's webinar. This webinar is being made available through a collaboration of the Florida Department of Children and Families, Office of Substance Abuse and Mental Health, and the Florida Alcohol and Drug Abuse Association. Please note that as an attendee, you are in listen-only mode and will only be able to view your name. If you have questions, please send them to the presenter and me, the host, by using the chat panel. The button to open the panel is usually located in the lower right side of your monitor. Please use the chat panel to send any questions you may have as you think of them, and the presenter will address questions as time permits. Our audio is broadcast through the internet to your computer. If you experience poor computer audio, there are a few options to try on screen right now, and these options will be posted in the chat panel. If you continue to experience poor audio through your computer, try rejoining the webinar and use the I will call in telephone option. But please remember, you must be connected to the audio of this presentation and view it on screen as well to receive a certificate of attendance. The recording and materials used in today's presentation will be available on FADA's website within 30 business days. To access the recording and PowerPoint and any other training materials, please go to www.fada.org, then to our Resource Center, and then to our training library. FADA produces many webinars and workshops through the support of the Florida Department of Children and Families. And to help participants track credits earned through attendance, we host an online community that provides a personalized digital journal where participants can maintain statements of credit for webinars and workshops taken through the Florida Alcohol and Drug Abuse Association. At the end of today's webinar, your web browser will direct everyone to an evaluation form on FADA's website. You will first need to register or sign in to your account to complete the evaluation. Information you provide FADA as a part of registering remains confidential. Statements of credit will be posted 30 business days after the evaluation closes for persons completing the evaluation and attending the full webinar. Completing the evaluation is necessary to receive CE credits or to access your statement of credit. Please note the evaluation will close at midnight on Monday, October 3rd. Up to 2 continuing education credits are available for participating in today's webinar for persons licensed through the Board of Nursing, the Board of Clinical Social Work, Marriage and Family Therapy, and Mental Health Counseling, and for persons credentialed through the Florida Certification Board. If you are a licensed healthcare practitioner, be sure to include your Florida license numbers when you register for these events. This is how CE Broker will keep up with your CEUs. If you are certified with the Florida Certification Board or licensed outside of the state of Florida, you do not need to provide your certification number when you register with our site. Please note that Zoom monitors arrivals and departures of attendees and provides a report upon completion of the event. We are not permitted to provide a certificate of attendance if you do not attend the entire webinar, and we are not permitted to provide partial CE credits. Now I'd like to welcome Julie Radlauer-Doerfler. She has more than 25 years of extensive experience in the field of human service and organizational development, including wraparound training, systems of planning, integration, strategic planning at the system level, grant writing, assisting organizations through the accreditation process, training, coaching, and providing technical assistance and teaching leadership, with a concentration on strategic planning, curriculum development, continuous quality improvement initiatives, and conducting large-scale organizational and system assessments. Julie has assisted numerous individuals, organizations, and systems of care in attainment of their goals. And now I'd like to welcome our presenter, Dr. Radler. I will turn the presentation over to you.
Good morning, everybody, and I hope that thank you, Becca. I hope you guys are staying safe and weathering the storm, so to speak. I think we're probably from all over the state and maybe the nation, but definitely here in Florida. I mean, a rain band just went by me, so just going to keep my fingers crossed that we all have power and connectivity throughout at least this training, but certainly moving forward and sending our thoughts and prayers. I'm in My kids are from school. I have a full house today. You'll probably hear lots of teenage boys, but I'm really excited to spend the next couple of hours with you guys talking about natural support systems to address behavioral health needs. So let's just start off with talking about what it is that we're going to accomplish together today. First is we're really going to spend some time understanding the value of natural supports. And then we're going to, towards the end, we are going to talk a lot about utilizing tools to assess natural support systems and actually practice some tools and tips and techniques that I'm going to share with you so that we learn how to help the people that we're working with expand natural support systems to help people address their behavioral health conditions. I'd like to start off by putting some information into the chat and asking you guys, if you would, to just kind of tell me a little bit about why you're here, what you were hoping to get out of today, what your role in the system is, maybe where you are around the state or around the country. And let's just kind of like take a minute to get to know each other and what you were hoping to accomplish over the next couple of hours. I want to try to make this, even though this is a webinar, I really want to try to make it as interactive as possible because that way I can find out from you what your needs are and make sure that I can tailor the information that I'm sharing with you to address natural support systems. I'll start off by just telling you, so Becca told you a little bit about myself. I'll tell you a little bit more about myself in terms of why I'm training on natural supports while you guys are typing information into the chat. So I am a licensed mental health counselor. I also have my DRPH, which is a doctor of public health. And in public health, there's a large emphasis on prevention and talking about things before they become a challenge or an issue. And so for me, I wanted to make sure that my goal is to, support people who might be experiencing mental health conditions, but with that public health lens, what I would do then is to try to prevent mental health issues in the first place. And my research has really demonstrated that the way to prevent mental health conditions is through support and social connection. And so I spend a lot of my time trying to focus on how do we help the people that we're working with kind of get ahead of mental health crisis and mental health
Julie, unfortunately, I think we lost you. I think the connection is not good right now. Can you hear us, Julie? Can you hear me? And we're sorry about this, everyone. She is actually down south. So please just bear with us while we try and get her back. Sorry, everyone. Just a quick reminder, we're just experiencing a technical issue just for a moment. Our presenter today, she's actually down south, and as you all know, Florida might be experiencing a little bit of a hurricane. So just give her just a few minutes. We're going to try and work with her and maybe get her on.
Can you hear me?
Oh, she's back. Yay.
Okay. Okay, good. Sorry. Sorry, it popped up saying that I was on mute, but I wasn't on mute, so I wasn't sure if you guys could hear me or not. Okay, good. I think I was having some connection issues, but it sounds like I'm back. Please confirm.
Yes,
Okay.
I can hear you.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Thank you. Okay, so I'm seeing that some of you guys were putting information in the chat about what you're hoping to achieve today. Did you hear me when I was talking about like how our current situation with the storm um, speaks to social supports or natural supports? Did you hear that?
No, we did not, Julie. You're probably
Okay.
going to have to kind of start back over from the beginning.
Okay.
Sorry about that. We couldn't hear anything. We lost you.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay. So, yeah, what I was saying was that our current situation in terms of this storm that we're experiencing is a really good example of natural supports or social supports. If you lived in an area that was under a mandatory evacuation, you would probably go to see family and friends, or you would stay with, maybe you would go stay at a hotel if you had the financial resources, but you would go stay with family or friends or coworkers that live in an area that's not being mandatorily evacuated. But if you don't have those resources and or you don't have family or friends that live in the area that you could go and stay with, you probably would end up going into a shelter, which is more of a formal support service, right? And so, in a perfect world, I think we'd all like to be staying in a space with family and friends and people who we know and love. But sometimes in reality, that's not an option, and so we end up having to use more formal supports and services. Um, and so when we don't have those natural supports in place, we then have to lean on systems. Which, when you go to a shelter, you don't know who else is going to be in the shelter. You don't know, if you can bring your pets. You don't know if you'll be comfortable. There's a lot of unknowns. But when you go to stay with family and friends, you know that you have the support of loved ones. So that's kind of the same thing, right? We want to help people build their support systems so that when they do need help and support, they can lean on somebody that they know, and they know that they will get the support and the help that they need. Thank you guys for putting into the chat some of the information that you're hoping to get out of the next couple of hours. We've got people here from Dade County, from Jacksonville. Um, I see people that work for the National Guard, which is interesting too. I guess you guys are probably busy today in Leon County. And so we're just, sending our thoughts and prayers to all of you guys that are impacted, and Okeechobee. So excellent. Welcome, everybody. So let's just kind of take a deep breath. And what if I told you that I have the magic formula? I have the magic formula for something that will increase your lifespan. You will live almost 4 years longer if you use my magic formula. Also, when you use my formula, it lowers stress. When you use this formula, you have better cardiovascular health, and it reduces your risk of cardiovascular disease. Also, this formula increases your immunity and your resistance to illness, which is a beautiful thing in the day and age that we live. And when you use this formula, you have a decreased risk for mental health conditions and or substance use conditions, including depression and or anxiety. Also, this formula makes you think faster. And when you use the formula, you have better psychological and physical well-being. So, anybody interested in this formula and want some of this formula, a little slice of this formula? And what do you think the formula is? What do you think that you could use that would increase or have or implement that would, give you all these amazing benefits, right? So yes, people who want it, sign me up, absolutely. Um, and why wouldn't you want that, right? Anybody have any thoughts about what it is? Just curious. Yes, social connection, right? A good support system. Exactly. That's why we're here today. But isn't it amazing to think that just by having support, you can have all of these things? I think that's noteworthy when you're talking to the people that you're working with on a regular basis, helping them understand the true value, not just psychologically, but also physically when they access support in their lives. So, what happens when you don't use the formula? Well, studies show that you have an increased risk for heart disease, that when you don't have social connections in your life, when you don't have social support in your life, it has the physical effects of smoking 15 cigarettes a day on your body, even if you don't ever smoke, which I think is really amazing. That you have increased risk of dementia and it slows down your brain functioning because you're not communicating with people on a regular basis. And the effects on your body are actually worse than if you were experiencing obesity. And when you don't have support in your life, you have increased risk of anxiety and depression. And a lot of people saw that over the course of the pandemic when we were isolated. People who were truly isolated and weren't staying in a home with another person had increased risks of anxiety and depression. So we're going to do a quick little activity. This would be so much better in person, but we'll go ahead and just wing it into the chat box if you don't mind. And this is just to help us kind of like ground ourselves in the value and importance of natural support. So I want you to think about in your own personal life. So this is not about a client that you're working with. This is about you in your own life. And I want you to think about a challenge that you've had in your own personal life. Now, for some of you guys, that might be the pandemic, or it might be a physical health challenge that you've experienced, or the loss of a loved one, something to that effect. Think about a personal crisis. And then I want you to think about how did you get through that crisis? What were the things, who were the people, what were the places that helped you kind of navigate that crisis, if you will? And so in the chat, I want you to just identify, were you able to get through the biggest crisis in your life through the assistance of your family, through the assistance of your friends, through the assistance of your faith, or through the assistance of a paid professional with an advanced degree? You can say more than one. You don't have to say, but think about which is the primary way that you got through your biggest challenge. And if you don't mind just popping that into the chat for a moment, that would be great. Let's kind of see, let's check in with each other about how we get through, So here in the chat, I'm seeing family and faith, faith and friends, family, faith and friends. What else? Family, faith and friends, family and faith, friends, grandmother, friends. Family and faith and friends, right? So there's a lot of church family, my own family versus the family I choose rather than my biological family, faith, 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 faith. Some people said, one person said all four, all of the above. Good. So it's not either or. It's not either family or faith, or it's not either friends or family, or it's not either, friends or paid professional. But the majority of us that are in the helping profession, I'm making an assumption that people on this call are in the helping profession. The majority of us that are in the helping profession, I've done this activity like hundreds of times, and most people raise their hands for family, faith, and friends. And then some people will raise their hand for the paid professional with the advanced degree. And so as a professional working in this field, you kind of have to ask yourself is like, if the majority of professionals, we get through our biggest challenges, our biggest crises, through the assistance of our family, faith, and friends, why do we believe that the people that we're working with can only get through their biggest challenges through us, paid professional with an advanced degree? And so I think that that's important for us to recognize that we need to help the people that we're working with learn how to better access their family, their faith, and their friends the same way that we do, so they can be as successful, as we are. It's not easy to do, and that's what we're going to do today. Is we're going to spend some time talking a little bit about how do we help people build these support systems. Because it's not easy, and people struggle with it. And I'm going to share with you some real tips and tools that can help you support them in building their support systems. Okay, so this is an individual activity, and if you're comfortable putting it into the chat, you're welcome to. But I just want to kind of like ground us a little bit on the value of who our connections are. So I want you to think about in your own personal life, and I want you to think about, you know, who are the people that you work with? I mean, like your people. If you work in a large organization and there's 200 people in your organization, who are your people? Who are the ones that you spend the most time with? Um, who are the people that live in your neighborhood? The people that you're close with in your neighborhood? Who are the people that are part of your friends circle? And think about those people and think about who those people are. Maybe you could ask yourself, who were the last 3 people that came to visit your home? That's another relevant question. Now think about like on television. Who do you watch on television? And then one more thing is, um, who do you pray with? Now, what I want you to do is I want you to think about what do these people, what is their culture? What do they look like? What is their race or their ethnicity, their gender, their age? And just for a second, pay attention to this. The people that you work with. If you work with in a large organization, but your 5 people that you spend the most time with look like you, what does that say? In your neighborhood, if everywhere you look in your neighborhood, everybody looks exactly like you, what does that say? Right? In your friend circle, if you like pull up your phone and you look at a couple of picture of your friends, if everybody's looks like you, same gender, same age, same color, same ethnicity, what does that say? Think about, what do you watch on television? What kinds of shows do you prefer to watch? And what does that say about you and your friend circle, or your support system, or who you prefer to go to? So, um, I just want you to think about that for a moment, because when I did this activity for the very first time, what I realized was that the majority of people that I spend time with look like me. And so, first of all, that told me I needed to expand I diversify my groups, but also it taught me that when I'm looking to help people build support systems, we have to pay attention to who do they prefer to spend time with, who are they most comfortable with, and help them build support systems in that way. Now, some of you guys may have said like, oh, well, I'm all over the board. There's no, uniformity, or it's very, my groups are very diverse. Fantastic. That's great. Others of you might have looked at this and done this like internal exercise and said like, oh my gosh, I only spend time with people who look like me. And that's okay too, though, like me, you might want to try to diversify, because I felt like that was something I really wanted to do. I think this is important though for when we're helping people get connected to family, faith, and friends. We need to know, well, who does that person want to get connected to, or who are they most comfortable with? I was just doing some work with a researcher who, she identifies as part of the queer community. And when she's talking about the people that are part of her support network, they're all people that are also part of the queer community. And she wants it that way. She feels much more comfortable being around people who look like her, who have the same, values and experiences as her, and that's her, or them, I should say, as them, and that is their choice, right? And so, but that awareness is really important, because we were looking for somebody that could support that person, and they decided that they really wanted that person to be somebody who also is part of the queer community, and a conscious choice. And so when you're talking to people and talking to them about their support systems, it's really important that you identify their culture, and not in a judgmental, oh, you really need to expand yourself kind of way, but much more in a what's valuable to you and what's important to you. And let's incorporate that into our decision-making process when we're trying to create support systems for you. So I feel like we need to kind of ground ourselves in the value of culture when making decisions around supports. And you're welcome to put information. If you kind of had an aha moment there and you feel comfortable, you can pop it into the chat. Just to remind you, I'm the only one that can see the chat myself, and FADA staff. And so I would not say like, oh, Becca said blah, blah, blah. But if you put information in the chat that you think might help other people, I will be happy to share that information anonymously, in the chat as well. So whatever you decide to put in there, just so you know, is not something that I'm going to like call you out on it, unless you want me to. Okay, so now we are going to watch a video. This is a video that talks a little bit about risk factors and protective factors. And I think that it will really kind of help you wrap your head around the value of supports. Okay. Well, so that video is really important because when we talk about um, when we talk about risk factors and protective factors. One of the protective factors is social connections. And so we're going to talk about that. Um, Protective factors really comes out of the Center for the Study of Social Policy. And I'm talking about through the Youth Thrive curriculum. So working with youth and families. And so the protective factors are resilience, social connections, concrete support in times of need, knowledge of parenting or knowledge of, your child's development, and then social emotional competences, which is, being able to regulate your emotions. And so when you have these protective factors, you have a greater likelihood of being able to deal with whatever risks come your way, right? So again, if you think about the storm and what we're experiencing right now, having resilience and the ability to kind of like, oh, okay, here we go again. Here's another storm, but I can manage my stress. I use those tools in my toolbox that can help me get through the next couple of days that may be a little bit more stressful. Social connections, we talked about how having access to, a friend or somebody where you can go and stay. Concrete support in times of need, and it could be financial, that could be just access to a place to live, to live for a while if you need something like that. It could be transportation. And oftentimes many of the people that we're struggling with, working with, they're struggling with things like transportation just to have their needs met. And so a protective factor is having somebody that you can contact, or understanding the bus schedule, or having a bicycle if that's what what you can use. Knowledge of whatever you're struggling with. So Youth Thrive, they speak a lot about parenting and child development, but say we're talking about a protective factor against, say, mental health conditions. So understanding your mental health condition, understanding your diagnosis, and being aware of it so that you can kind of manage that process for yourself. And then social and emotional competence. And this really speaks to kind of that emotional intelligence and your ability to, communicate what you need, deal with your stress and regulate your emotions, and build relationships. And so all of these protective factors, like what was mentioned in the video, are things that we can do to impact the way that the way that we're struggling, whether it's with mental health conditions or substance use conditions. And so you see that having social connections is one of those protective factors. If we can work with people and help them build social connections, there's a greater likelihood that whatever struggles come their way, they'll be able to navigate that because of their experience and support through their social connections. So we've danced all around social supports and natural supports. Let's talk about what they are. So social connection is the experience of feeling close and connected to others. It's about being loved, cared for, valued. And it basically it's the basis of all interpersonal relationships that we have. And so in order to have natural supports, you need to have social connection. And so people need to understand, value, and learn how to create social connections so that they have supports, ongoing, sustainable support systems. Let's talk a little bit about according to the American Psychological Association, some of those benefits of natural supports. And we talked about the benefits of the magic potion, if you will, in the beginning. But this is like a little bit deeper. So social relationships are stress buffering. And so it helps us address any mental health by, you know, improving our self-esteem, improving our life choices, even improving our motivation. Like if you're ever going to go, I don't know, you're trying to lose weight and you want to, go for a walk. Well, yeah, I'm tired. It's the end of the day. I knew I said that I was going to walk, this evening, but I should have done it in the morning because now I'm tired. But you know what? If you're meeting a friend, and you're going to go for a walk together, that's that motivation that might actually make you go for that walk, which is then going to help you lose the weight or have healthy choices, right? Same thing with food. Like if I'm trying to lose weight and I decide that, okay, I'm going to really eat a healthy diet. If I'm kind of collaborating with somebody or somebody's holding me accountable for that, there's a greater likelihood that I'm going to make that healthy food choice. And so having these social connections in our lives, these natural supports, help us achieve whatever our goals, are. So let's talk a little bit about the components of natural supports. We're going to like really break it down into really what are natural supports, so we understand it, and then we're going to talk about like some examples about how we can actually build them. So one aspect or component of natural supports. So natural supports really is like either emotional support, instrumental support, or informational support, right? So emotional support is I'm here for you. I'm a shoulder for you to lean on. Instrumental support is like I can provide you with money if you need it, or a ride somewhere or something to that effect. And then informational support is like I'm going to help you get through an IEP meeting at school, an individual education plan meeting at school, or I'm going to teach you, a technique, or I'm going to teach you about your diagnosis. Right? Those are informational supports. It's education. So, some of these components of natural support systems, like one of them is social integration, which is really the quality of your social relationships. We're not talking about the numbers of people, but we're talking about the depth of relationships. And if you have good, solid relationships that you can, lean on. Another component of natural supports is our network ties and our social structures. And what makes this so important, an important component, is like, say that I'm looking for a job. Now, I can have a lot of really good friends, but if none of my really good friends have access to information about new jobs that are available, that's not going to help me that much, right? But if I have a broad network of people and somebody says, "Oh, you're looking for a job? I know somebody that's hiring right now. Let me make that connection for you," right? And so that natural support is helping you get connected, those network ties. Another component of a social support system is that relational content, which is just like, I care about you, I'm concerned for you. It's that person that sends you the text, like, how are you doing today? Or if any of you guys, because since most of us are in Florida, got that text or sent that text today about, thinking about you in the storm, be safe. That's that, relational support system, right? Another one is social influence, which is guidance about norms and behaviors. And so this is really important for youth that we're working with. If youth are spending time with other youth that do things like, steal or skip school or do drugs, then there's a greater likelihood that our youth will do the same because they're getting their guidance about the norms and what's appropriate from the people that they spend time with. If they're spending time with people with students who really value work and don't go out on the weekends because they're studying, well, then that's kind of the norm that they're going to have too. And so you want to really pay attention to that. Who are the people that you're spending time with when you're trying to do things like get people to stop using substances or supporting them through mental health? You want to pay attention to their support systems, because if I'm trying to stop using substances, but all the people that I spend time with use substances, it's really hard for me to do that. I won't be able to. I'll have to change my friend group, which is really hard for people to do. But when we understand how to help them build support systems, we make it a little bit easier for them. And that becomes part of our role, right? Another important component of social supports is really like how we can support each other to do positive practices. So, that's that whole going to the gym, is we want our friends to encourage us, not discourage us from doing things. And then lastly, there's a lot of science around something called this like belongingness. And so part of a big important component of natural supports is a sense of belongingness. That what you're doing or who you spend time with, that you matter to that person, that you're part of, this group, and you belong to this group, and your participation matters. Okay, so all of these components are important. In a perfect world, we have all of these components in all of our lives, and we can go skipping off into the sunset. In reality, I might have really good, deep relationships, but I don't have a lot of network ties. Or I've, since COVID, I've really struggled with this sense of belonging, and I haven't really had a place to belong. Um, so we want to talk to people and be very specific about what are their needs in terms of social support or natural support, and then help them build that specifically. If I'm doing really well with, I have good deep relationships, I have people that care about me, I make good choices in terms of my norms and my values, but I really don't have a sense of belonging, well, then you, as a helping professional, you're going to help me find a group to belong to. And that's going to then fill, kind of like complete my support systems. So let's talk about who some potential natural supports could be. And so we've got examples here, family, friends, coworkers. I want you to think about who are the people that are your natural supports. When I said to you, do you get through with your family, your faith, your friends? Be a little bit specific. Are they people from your job? Are they people from your neighborhood, from your community? Are they people from your childhood? Um, just kind of put that into the chat for a minute, so we can kind of see that who we, this almost 200 people on this call, like who do we get our support from? For me, I get my support from probably most of these because I have a really large support system. But I also, because I train on this stuff, I work at it all the time. Um, yeah, so family and friends, some what you guys are putting into the chat. I see, family, friends, my sorority, which is a really big one. So somebody asked, can they say nature? I mean, so nature, yes, you can get your energy from nature, but if you needed a ride, could nature help you? I'm not so sure. But same thing though, that a lot of people get support from their animals, and so your animal is always there for you. Does that help you and that create support for you? Absolutely. So yes, you could say nature if that's really genuinely where you get your support from. You wouldn't want that to be the only thing. One of the things that's really important about support systems is that we have to have what's called strong ties as well as weak ties. And so a strong tie is that depth, right? And you want to have at least 3 to 5 people who you really can count on. Those are your friends, those are your family, those are maybe your coworkers. It's the people that if you had a flat tire, you would call. Those are your strong ties. And then your weak ties are people that are part of your life, but ancillarily, or maybe like extended family members. I mean, yes, you might be able to call, an aunt or an uncle and ask them to give you a ride, but not if you haven't spoken with them a little bit. It might be a little strange out of nowhere to be, hi, I haven't talked to you in 6 months, but I have a flat tire. Can you come pick me up? That doesn't really work. So, but we need to have both the strong ties and the weak ties. And the more ties you have, the better you do. But you also can't just have only weak ties. You need to have strong ties. That's one of the big struggles with our youth and adults too these days when it comes to social media, is that many of them feel as though like, oh, well, I have a ton of friends on Facebook. Probably kids would say that on Instagram or on Snapchat, right? I use myself with my Facebook. But um, are those strong ties? And can actually be strong ties. But if the people that you're communicating with on Facebook or Instagram are, all over the world, or don't live in your state, or even if they do live in your state, you don't really see them in person, then that's not really a strong tie. That's more of a weak tie. And again, weak ties are not bad. It's just we can't only have weak ties. And I think we learned that during COVID. We learned that you really, yes, you can get on Zoom with people, but you also need to be in human form with people. So thank you guys for sharing information in the chat about where you get your natural supports from. So in a perfect world, and this is when we're working with the people that we're working with. If I started off this training and said to you, like, do you really feel as a professional in this industry that it's your job to help people find friends, or it's your job to make sure that people are connected to faith? Some of you would say when it comes to family, if you're working in a therapeutic role, that yes, it is your job to build family relationships. Because as a therapist, you feel like, you would do family counseling or something to that effect. Right? But I often get a little bit of pushback from professionals when I say like, it's your job to help people find friends. You're like, really? That's not my job. Like I'm supposed to help people get connected to formal resources or something to that effect, but it's not my job to help people find friends. In reality, though, really, when we're trying to support people, a big part of their success is going to be the natural supports in their lives. And I'm going to show you a couple of exercises that help you realize that it actually is more of your job than you think it is to help people get connected to their family, their faith, and their friends. And so people balk a little bit and say, well, what about separation of church and state and all of that? But I'll show you in a little bit why that is important. When you're working with people and trying to help them be successful and sustainable, only 25% of the people that are involved in their services or supports should be what we call formal service providers, which is, like our case managers, our therapists, many of you guys here, people who are being paid to work with the families. But in reality, we also want 75% to be what we call natural supports and people who will continue to be part of their lives, even though we're not still receiving a paycheck. Now, some of you guys could be paid professionals, but then, especially when you're working with, youth or families and you build a strong relationship with them over the time, you might continue to be part of their lives beyond their formal treatment services or formal service providers. And then you kind of transition from a formal service provider to a natural support, which is okay. There are some people kind of like go, wait a second, what about professional boundaries with that? There are some, ethical guidelines around, if you're in a strict therapeutic relationship, that you have to have that kind of like professional boundary. But that doesn't really refer to you can't have contact with the client after you're no longer providing services for them. It refers to you shouldn't have sexual relationships with the client. You shouldn't accept gifts from the client, right? So you need to like identify what are those professional boundaries, but checking in with them every couple of months or having them contact you if they just kind of want to say hi. That's really looking at somebody as as a holistic person, and not just saying like, well, I'm not getting paid, so I can't be part of your life anymore. Now, does that mean that you're gonna like, you know, give them your social security number? No, we're not gonna do that, right? Right. But we can definitely certainly, check in and kind of say like, I was just thinking about you and wondering how your birthday was or something to that effect, right? So let's understand a little bit about how and some of the important aspects of support systems and natural support systems. So one thing is it's really important to recognize that we have different needs and different people meet our different needs. And this is a really important nuance because what we end up doing is we say to somebody like, okay, who's your support system? Okay, your mom or grandma. And then like every need you have, the person has, we as professionals will say to them, we'll call grandma and see if grandma can help you. Or just ask your mom and see if your mom can help you. But what ends up happening is like mom or grandma, they're really tired. They feel as though they're constantly giving, giving, giving. And so we want to sprinkle the wealth. We want to say like, okay, so if your need is something related to, we'll just like, we'll do this example. Say you're driving and you get a flat tire. Think about who are you going to call? Who would you call for that flat tire? Now, many people are going to say AAA, which is 100% true. But if you had to like put into the chat somebody other than AAA, who would you tend to call if you were driving and you got a flat tire? Just kind of type that into the chat real quick. Okay, so somebody said my sister. I hope your sister's not going to change her tire, but she could. That was pretty sexist of me, right? But it tends to be more men, right? I'm going to call my dad, or yeah, so somebody said my dad, my husband, my friend, AAA, my brother, right? So it tends to be more male. Sometimes somebody said, "Oh, I'm going to call my grandmother." I was like, "Really? You're going to call your grandmother to change your tire?" Right? So my nephew, roadside assistance, right? So when we have something like that, we tend to call on, it tends to be a male, but somebody, right? That could change it. And yes, we should all know how to change our own tire. Now, let's say that I have a young child in daycare. And where my child goes to daycare, they charge you $1 a minute if you're running late. And so I'm going to be running late to pick up my child, which, happened a lot when I was younger, and or my children were younger. And so who am I going to call? Who would you call if you're, in the process of like, oh my gosh, I'm 15 minutes away and daycare closes in 5 minutes. That's 10 extra dollars I'm going to have to spend. Who would I call? Put that into the chat. Think about who's that person that would help you in that scenario. So it could be um, a friend. It could be, yeah, a friend. It could be my grandmother, the closest person to the daycare. I love that. Absolutely. My neighbor. It could be the father of the child. Absolutely. It could be somebody said, I don't have children, but I'm the person that always gets these calls. It could be a mom of another child in daycare. She's there anyway, right? Or a dad of a child in daycare, right? So, right, your sisters look out for each other's children. Absolutely, right? That's who you're going to call. Now, let's say I'm in the middle of baking brownies and I run out of sugar. It's like, oh my gosh, I just need like one more cup of sugar to make the most delicious brownies ever. Who are you going to call? Who's the person that you're going to just reach out to right in that moment? Put that information into the chat right now. So if I'm running out of sugar, I would be contacting my neighbor, right? The person next door, my next door neighbor, whoever is coming over to my house to eat those brownies. Neighbor, 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 neighbor. Lots of neighbors into the chat. Thank you. So you notice that the person who's going to change your tire is different than the person who's going to bring you sugar, right? And you also notice the person who's going to pick up your children is different for many of you than the person who's going to change your tire or the person that's going to bring you sugar, right? So we have different people that we rely on for different needs. We don't just automatically say my mom, my mom, my mom, or we don't just automatically say grandma, 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 right? So it's important for us to recognize that different people meet different needs for us. And because of that, we're able to be successful. So we need to recognize that the people that we're working with, we have to help them understand this about their support systems, that they need to have different people to help them meet different needs. Another important aspect of natural supports and building natural supports is recognizing this concept of reciprocity. So what this really means is that you're not only in the position to accept help, you're also in a position to give help and support. And this is really important because many of the people that we work with, they often need support. And because they need support, they're not necessarily thinking about how can they help others. But the people that they need support from, mom or grandma or somebody like that, is always giving, 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 but not getting anything in return, right? And those supports end up getting a little bit frustrated and tired and feel unappreciated. And so when we're talking to the people that we're working with, our families that we're working with, our clients, we want to help them understand that when you ask for help from somebody, you also then need to give help, right? And you create this reciprocal relationship. So it's not one-sided. It's not always like give me, give me, give me, that it's actually a combination of, give me some help and I will give you some help, or what can I do for you? And that's really an important component of what we're talking about when it comes to support systems, because that creates sustainable support systems. That means that people will continue to support the families that we're working with when the families that we're working with also give help to others. And sometimes professionals kind of say like, oh, but the families I'm working with are so much in crisis, or there's just dealing with so much chaos that they're really not able to help others. But the truth of the matter is, it doesn't have to be a grand gesture. It can just be like going over to mom's house and running the vacuum for a minute, right? Or having the kids go over and clean out the gutters or something to that effect, just to show that you appreciate what the person's doing. And also, it's important for us to remember that when we help other people, it helps us feel good. And that it's actually one of those, protective factors is, like like creating that reciprocal and volunteering and altruism. And so if we can help the people that we're working with feel good by helping others, it's kind of a win-win, you know? So I think it's really important that we recognize that that is part of the equation. If you're going to ask for help from somebody, you need to figure out how are you going to help that person too, so that it's a give and take. So let's talk for a moment about why natural supports. Why do we care about having natural support systems? Why is it so important? Well, because they stick around longer. People that are working and getting paid, once a family, is successful, then we no longer are part of their lives. But natural supports are going to be there forever, right? If they're nurtured properly, and if they help families become more resilient, they help families build this sense of self-confidence, and people feel connected. And also, natural supports tend to be more culturally competent. Um, you know, I can show up as a white person who's going to support a family, but if I'm working with a family who's, from India, their natural supports would probably be from India, right? Remember that activity we did earlier where you identified who your supports were, and they're going to have a stronger tie because they have more in common. And so we have to recognize the value in this, and help people also recognize the value in this. So, um, I want you guys, and I think Becca put this information into the chat. This is a tool that you can, oh yes, I see it. This is a tool that you could use. So I want to just take a moment and ask you guys to, download this tool and let's look at it together. Okay, so, uh, sorry. Okay, so this is a tool from the RAND Institute. And the value in using a tool like this is that you can sit down with somebody that you're working with and talk to them about their support systems. And people might not be that comfortable sharing information about their support systems because they feel like, well, that's a little personal. You're asking me about, like my friends. Why do you care about my friends? You're a behavioral health professional, right? But when you can ask those similar questions using a tool like this and really get a sense from people about what supports they do have and where they really need help in building support systems. And once we're aware of where they really need help, then we can help them build that support. So let's just look at some of these questions together. Someone you can count on who will listen to you when you need to talk, and you want to find out, do they have somebody like that in their life? Now, if they do, and it's their therapist, well, that's nice. And at some point, we want to transition from a therapist helping them, right? Somebody that you can talk to when you need advice, or somebody that you can, share some of your fears with. We also want to ask some questions about like somebody who understands you. That's really important and helpful. When we think about concrete supports or tangible supports, it's like, do you have a ride? Um, if you were not feeling well, who would bring you chicken soup or who would bring you medicine? That's a really important question, because when you're not feeling well, and you're feeling really alone, that's a time when you could, experience some kind of depression. Somebody that could help you with chores or somebody that could help you, with meals. And then we want to pay attention to what's called affectionate support here, which is, who gives you a hug? And some people, oh, I don't care. I don't really, want a hug or need a hug. We all need physical touch. Research demonstrates that. And so we want to find out if somebody, have you not been hugged in a while? And, how do we build that support system? And then your positive social interaction. So who are your good time friends? Who are the people that you choose to relax with? Or what do you do? Who do you want to be with? And what do you do when you're trying to just kind of like chill out? So those are all really important questions. And you can have a somewhat like objective conversation about this when you use a tool like this. And then the information from this is then what we will use to help us kind of like guide our process when we're helping people build support systems. So I hope that you use this tool. There's many others, and another tool, and I'll put the information in the chat, is a Youth Thrive tool. that really helps. They have a whole section about social connectedness, which is really this one, is universal. The one from the Rand or Foundation, but the or corporation, but the You Thrive one is more specific to youth, and it's a great tool, to talk to youth about social connections or social connectedness. So now, what we're going to do is we're going to take just a 5-minute break, get up and move around, go grab a cup of coffee. If there's somebody in your home, check on them and make sure everybody's doing okay with the storm. And we will come back just 5 minutes. So we'll come back at 11:05 Eastern Time, 10:05 Central Time. Okay?
Everyone, welcome back to today's webinar. We are going to pick back up with Dr. Radler right now. Thank you.
Thank you. I hope you had a chance to go get something to drink. I was just peeking at the television, and it looks like the eye wall is coming in over Fort Myers right now. Looks pretty windy over there. So I hope everybody's safe. Um, I put the link in the chat for the Youth Thrive survey. It's actually not the survey, it's information about Youth Thrive, and you have to like just put your name in and email address, and then you can get access to the survey. So I figured I'd give you a little bit of background about the Youth Thrive initiative before you looked at the survey. So I hope that this is a tool that you feel comfortable using, either the RAND tool or the Youth Thrive tool. There's others as well, but the other ones tend to be a little more technical, if you will. These ones I think are really good just to sit down and have a conversation about it. You know, like it's really, people get a little guarded when you say, like, oh, tell me about your friends. But if you say, like, look, one of the things we're going to be looking to do is help you expand your support system. Let's do this assessment tool so we get a sense of, you know, like a shot of like where you're at right now, you know, like your baseline for your support system, you know, and you kind of make it a little bit more professional, if you will, a little less invasive. People feel more comfortable sharing, and then you can really assess it in a, I don't want to say a clinical way, but just assess it in a way where we're kind of like breaking down where, you know, where we need to lean in a little bit and where we need to provide some extra support. Technical is the word I was looking for. Okay, so let's talk for a moment. Actually, we're going to watch a video about how to help you build natural support systems, and then I'm going to share with you some tools in the next part of our time together. So this is a video about how to develop, quote, an awesome social support system. Okay, so I hope you enjoyed that video. Just gives you a little bit of a sense of like, again, we're gonna break it down into details and specifics because we want to be like technical about it, and we want to have like like let's focus on this area of your life, and then what are we going to do to build this area. Very planful when we're trying to help people build support systems. So here are some examples of questions that you can use, and you can take a screenshot, but you guys have access to the PowerPoint, so you'll be able to kind of like cut and paste these questions or whatnot. But these are some sample questions that you might ask youth or adults when you're trying to talk to them about building social connections, youth, their parents, any clients that you're working with. They're different than the kinds of questions that we typically ask. When we're trying to get to know somebody, we might ask them, okay, tell me about your history of mental health. Tell me about your history of substance use. What kind of medications are you on? We tend to ask those kinds of questions. But in reality, if we want to find out information about people's support systems, we have to ask them questions about their support systems. And so these are some just examples of questions. And I would just say if you tend to ask questions that are maybe like different than this, if you wouldn't mind popping your question into the chat, that way I can kind of share it with others and we can see, give people other examples of questions that you might ask. Some of the ones that I like is, we might say to somebody like, who's your emergency contact? But then do we ask them to tell us about them? That if you think about that, who's going to come and change your tire? That might be your emergency contact. But I want to know more information. I want to know, is that person, just the person that I should call if there's an emergency, or is that somebody that you really rely on and you lean on? Those of you that have children is like, tell me, who helps you with your kids? Tell me more about them. Is this like a babysitter that you pay? Or is this somebody that is, a friend and you help them and they help you, which is a support system that we want to work on. Not that a babysitter's, not something that we would lean on as support. It is, but we're paying that person, so that's formal. We're looking to help people create these kind of like natural systems, right? This last one, we're going to use this information later on for an activity, but like, who are the last 5 people that called or texted, or who are the last couple of people that came to your home? So I think that that's important too, Somebody put a nice question into the chat. I like this. It's like, if you're having a bad day, who would you call? Or who would the person you would lean on be? That's a nice question too, if we're talking about support systems. Thank you for sharing that. I like that one. So let's talk a little bit about how do we build supports. Well, one thing is, let's pay attention to our existing relationships. I might have had some really good friends, and then who knows, I went through a really difficult time and I isolated. I know me, myself, I've been doing a lot of research lately. And when I do research, I kind of go into like a hole and it's like, I just need to get my work done. And so I neglect my friends and my family when I'm doing research. So, when I finish and I kind of dust off the cobwebs, I look around and I realize I don't know what's happening in anybody else's lives. I've been so, consumed with doing research that I have to really attend to my existing relationships and say like, I'm sorry that I wasn't there for you. I warned you in advance, but I'm really sorry and I miss you. And, like, help me figure out, catch me up to speed with what's going on in your life because, I miss, I miss spending time with you, or I miss us. So I think that is an important thing, is like, if we can just kind of realize like, we do maybe have friends or family that we might have lost touch with along the way. And how do we rebuild some of that so that we can continue to have support in our lives? I think that would be something we would pay attention to. And what does that look like to lean into them? So what do we have to do in order to build that relationship back up, if we want that? So then another one is taking social risks. So now, if you're working with a teenager who's out there running around and doing drugs and we don't want them to take any more social risks. We're good on the risks. But if you're working with somebody who's socially isolated, and maybe has kind of lost touch a little bit, then we might want to talk to that person and say like, okay, what kinds of risks, can you take that might help you, kind of build those support systems again, if you will, if you can. Um, maybe talk about like what are the things that they're interested in and like how do we get them involved in, say, like community activity or doing something at the park or even support group, something to that is another example. Professional support is always a way to begin the process for building support systems if we really have nothing else. We might talk about, an activity called My Five, which I'm going to share with you in just a few minutes. And then we've already spoken about reciprocity. What can you do for other people? Maybe right now I'm feeling really lonely, but if I lean in and spend time with like my father who's not doing well, or I spend time with my friend who's got a young child and she, could really use the company. Well, that's going to help me build my support system too, right? And then talk about what are the things you want to do? Where do you want to go? Who do you want to be with? I really miss going to the gym. Okay, so let's go to the gym. Maybe you'll find somebody who also likes the gym because you're going to be at the gym, and you'll be able to build that support system in that way. So I'm going to show you a couple of tools that are really useful for building support systems. One of them is called an ecogram. Ecogram is something that many clinicians use to kind of look at like, family tree type stuff and family dynamics, but we use it a little differently when we're talking about support systems. And then another one is a concentric circle or communication circle activity. And both of these are great tools that you can use to build support systems. So the first one is our ecogram for natural supports. And so the way that this tool would work is you would say our goal is to help people build positive peer relationships, right? We want to get people connected to family, faith, and friends. The first thing we do is put in the middle the person's name, and we would say something to the effect of they want to build positive peer relationships, or they want to get more involved with other people. That would be right. Then in each of these circles, we're going to think about a different aspect of that person's life. And we tend to call these like life domains. And so we want to ask them in each of the important life domains in their life, who is a potential person that could be a support? So let's work through this. Say I'm working with somebody, a student, who feels very lonely and isolated, and our goal is to help them build positive peer relationships. So I'm going to say, when you're at school, is there one person at school that you could talk to if you were feeling lonely or isolated? Is there anybody? And they might say like, sometimes I talk to my math teacher, or yeah, I guess I could go to talk to the guidance counselor, or I mean, I don't sit by myself. I sit at lunch with people, but they're not really my friends. But yeah, I could ask one of them, or they might give you a name, right? Then you could say, okay, when you're at home, in your home, and you're feeling lonely or isolated, who's the one person you're likely to talk to? Now, for some people, this could be their animal, right? It could be like, oh, I just spend time with my dog. Great, put the dog's name there, right? Because that's a support. Or my mom, or sometimes I'll talk to my brother, or something to that effect, right? Then you go to the next circle and say, okay, so when you're in your neighborhood where you live, is there anybody that you ever talk to? It's like, well, sometimes if I'm walking around, I'll talk to my one neighbor, but we're not really friends, but at least I talk to that person. Great, let's write that neighbor's name down. Then you would say like, okay, in your extended family, so not the people that live in your home, but your other relatives, is there any one person that you're close to? And then I go, yeah, I kind of like my cousin, or my aunt's really helpful sometimes. And so fine, we'll put that person down. Then we would say, okay, in the faith community, are you involved in faith at all? And they would say, well, I used to go to church, but I haven't gone in a long time. Okay, so when you did go to church, was there one person at church um, that, you could connect with or talk to? Yeah, my pastor, youth pastor, I used to be friends with her. Great, put it down. Okay. How about on social media? Is there anybody on social media that you really connect with outside of just like responding or liking their chats, but that you communicate with? Okay, we can put that person down. You could say, are there any, community clubs or groups that you're a member of, or school-based clubs or groups that you're a member of, right? So everybody's circles are going to be different depending on their involvement. Now, what's going to happen when you do this activity is one, you're going to realize the person has more support than they realized they did, right? So that's one option, is they'll look at this and go like, oh, I guess I do actually have some people. Now I just need to work on like nurturing some of those relationships so I feel more connected, right? The other thing that could happen is, and sometimes this does happen, is you look at all of these circles and they literally have nobody. They're not connected at school. They're not connected at home. They're not connected in their neighborhood. They're not connected in their faith. They're not, and you realize this person really is very disconnected in every aspect of their lives. So just put into the chat, I'm just going to ask you the question. If you were working with somebody who was completely disconnected from every aspect of their life, how would that person feel? How would that person be showing up? Just think about that for a minute. Depressed, right? The person would be depressed, would be empty, would be withdrawn, discouraged, lonely, isolated, right? Hopeless. Yeah, all of those things. So now remember before when I asked you, do you feel like it's your job to help somebody find their friends? If you're working with people who are experiencing depression or anxiety and they have nobody in their lives, they probably should be feeling depressed or anxious, right? That's what happens when you don't have support in your life. You guys just said it. So, do you see now how important it is for you to figure out with the people that you're working with what their support systems look like? Because we in the behavioral health field, we take somebody who may not have any supports in their lives and they come to us, a paid professional, and we medicate them and we do therapy about their family relationships, right? And that kind of stuff. But we don't look at their existing support systems into the depth that we should. And when we don't do this, we're like scratching people where they don't itch. Like I could talk to you all day long about my inner child and my familial relationships from when I was growing up. But if I don't have people in my life now, I will still continue to be depressed. If I still feel sad and lonely and isolated in my present day, I will still continue to feel, lonely and isolated. So we have to pay attention to this because this is the current reality of what people are experiencing. So this becomes part of your job to make sure that people are connected to family, friends, faith, community, because that dictates their current mental health. Now there are some people that truly do need to be medicated, right? And medication is a tool. I'm not saying anything against it. I'm just saying that it's not the only solution. And for oftentimes we don't pay attention to this aspect. And as a professional, it's a really important thing that we should do for sustainability, is to really support people in creating their support systems. So, I just want you to kind of like, um, let that sink in for a minute because it should this if you didn't already spend a lot of time on support systems with the people that you're working with, this should change your perspective on it, just having this conversation, this part of this conversation right here, um, because we have to work on this, right? And somebody put into the chat, and I like this, in building supports, to reverse the ecogram, so that who are the people that we could help, which I kind of like too. Because there's somebody, like I said, if I have a friend who has a young child, and they don't spend a lot of time with people, well, I could go and help that person. I'm building support too. And maybe even for me, now I feel better helping somebody else as opposed to asking for help. Asking for help is a huge barrier. So thank you. That's a great way to put it. Asking for help is a huge barrier for people, as you don't want to seem as though you need help and support. And so I think it's really that's a nice way to like frame it, if you will. And somebody else put into the chat, and let's talk about this for a minute. So some people choose to be alone, and don't report being lonely. Yeah, there's a lot of introverts that can function with a smaller circle. Uh, and there are people who choose to be alone because they just genuinely like their own company, and that's totally fine, right? However, if somebody's choosing to be alone and they're experiencing loneliness and depression, then it's somebody you want to work with. I can't say like, oh, well, you just spend all this time by yourself. And even though the perfect person is perfectly fine, I'm like, but you need to spend more time with other people. That's me putting my views on them. But if somebody's coming to you because they are experiencing depression or anxiety and they spend a lot of time alone, then we want to work on this and help them build support systems because that's probably part of the reason that they're experiencing some of the mental health conditions that they're experiencing. Even if they don't say it, if they're coming to you because they're experiencing mental health, then we're going to work on this and help them build support systems. Thank you guys so much for putting that really good information into the chat. Another tool that you can use is something called communication circles, concentric circles. It's all kind of the same thing. And this is a really good like visual tool to help people, like kind of you can have people write in their own people so that you get them involved. The previous one, you can have them do the writing too. And, on this tool, you can have them do the writing too. And then also somebody put into the chat, which I really like, is make these lines like two-way arrows that really represents the reciprocity, which I think is lovely too. So thank you. So in this example here, in the center circle, we're going to put who are your people, like your go-to people, those strong ties, if you will, because I shared with you guys a little bit about the research around strong ties and weak ties. So who are your strong ties, the people that you really can lean on? Then in the circle just outside of it, so that middle circle, here you might say like, okay, so who are the people that I should know information about? Who are the people that I like you don't see them every day, but you could, check in with them on the weekends, and maybe it's somebody that we could potentially connect with, something like that, right? And then that outer circle are like who are your acquaintances? People that like when you see them in the hall, you kind of say hi. Or if you see them walking around the block and you just kind of wave or you nod, right? It would be nice to know those people, right? And so our goal here is just to get people thinking about who are potentials, So I've got my couple of people in my inner circle, and that's great. When I've got people in my middle circle, my goal is who of those people do we want to convert to our inner circle? So it's people that I see around school, but and maybe I chat with them a little bit. How do I make that person a friend? Right? And we will put a plan together to intentionally make that person a friend, right? And then those people in the outer circle, like, okay, how do I turn that person into somebody that I could actually have a conversation with instead of just a head nod or a wave? How do I turn that person into like somebody that will walk with me in the hallway? Or if I see them sitting at lunch, I could sit down with them, right? And then we'll intentionally put a plan together for that. So it just gets people thinking about who are potential people that could be a part of their lives. And this is another really good tool for something to that effect. So we're going to do an activity together so that I can kind of like walk you through this process of building support systems. Oftentimes what happens is you're working with somebody here and you do this assessment and you realize they really have nobody. Like, wow. And you know what? In Florida, we're a pretty transient state. People move here and they like don't have anybody. Or because of immigration status, they moved here, but they don't feel like they can, like reach out to people, or they don't have access to reaching out to people, or they're, working so much because they're just trying to make ends meet or whatever reason. So sometimes, rarely, but sometimes you'll be working with somebody and they have like nobody, right? And so when that happens, what you want to do is you want to do this activity with them. And you want to help them like from the ground up build support systems. Okay. And so let's talk about how we would do that. You start off with identifying what the need is, which is to build positive support systems, right? Then we're going to list out the strengths associated with that need. So the things that the person likes, interests, strengths, talents that they're good at, so that we can help them meet that need using their strengths. then we're going to be really practical about this and really identify as many options as we can, actual community options that exist where they can use those strengths and their culture to help them meet that need, right? And then let them choose one. Then we want to find out, is this feasible? Who are the people that could potentially help them do this? And I'll walk you through why this is really important, because we as professionals, we might say like, okay, yeah, well, you need to go, whatever, join a bowling league. But then it turns out that person doesn't have transportation. Well, how are they going to get to and from the bowling league? We have to work this through and make sure that joining the bowling league is actually feasible. Because if it's not, then we need to come up with a different option. Don't put a plan in place for somebody that they can't accomplish, because then they get frustrated and so do we. Right? And then the last is we'll put together a plan around this, which is like the specifics of it. So let's use this tool to with a client, an actual client, and kind of work through this process together. And I'll ask you guys to, type into the chat at certain points. So I'll read this story to you, this scenario to you. And this is a plan for Brian, and we want Brian to create connections in the community. Okay. So Brian is a 17-year-old in the 11th grade in ESE classes, exceptional student education classes. He lives with his mother, Mary, and two younger brothers, Jack and William. Brian enjoys computer games and plays with his neighbor. He also likes to walk the dog. Both brothers are in elementary school. Mary is working from home due to COVID. The family has been receiving services for 5 months and was making progress until Brian stopped showering, began spending more time in his room, and neglected his schoolwork. Mary has her hands full with working from home and trying to help the younger children with school. Brian was participating in virtual wellness groups until he stopped attending, communicating with staff, and is just now saying that he wants to speak to his therapist again. Mary is worried that if he continues to withdraw, he may attempt to harm himself like he has done in the past. So this is a scenario about, a 17-year-old who is isolated, right? I want you for a moment to just kind of think about like, well, what are the strengths? Like, what are things that this young man, Brian, likes to do? What are potential strengths that we can use to help us put together a plan for Brian? Remember, we're starting off with the need, which is to create connections in the community. List the strengths associated with the need. So, what are the strengths? Put some into the chat if you don't mind. Okay, he likes computers. He likes playing with his neighbor or spending time with his neighbor. He's connected with the dogs, so he likes walking dogs, computers. So neighbor, computers, dog, right? And he's got family too. Family. He's got a loving mom, and he's got younger siblings that he can also spend time with. He's getting support for his classes with ESE support. He's got a therapist, right? There's lots of strengths here. So what we want to do then is we want to figure out how do we use those strengths to help him meet his needs. So let's brainstorm some potential options about what Brian can do using those strengths that you guys just identified to help him meet his needs. So what kinds of things could Brian do? Well, Brian could he could get a job at he could join a computer club, which is great. He could get a job at a computer store or like a GameStop kind of store or something like that. Um, he could take his dog to the dog park, right? And take his brothers with him. So that gives mom a little bit of a break, which is nice. Maybe he could walk, you guys are putting great things into the chat. Maybe he could walk the dog with his neighbor. Or maybe he could, go back to the virtual wellness group or join a in-person support group if that's possible. Maybe he could start a dog walking business in his neighborhood and walk other people's dogs, which would be cool too. What else did he like? Yeah, dog walker. He could join a gaming club. He could go for daily walks with his neighbors. He could work in an animal shelter because he loves dogs so much. You guys are putting great suggestions into the right. So you see, if you just take a moment and you actively brainstorm, we just came up with 10 different options about things that we can do using his strengths, right? And then we would say, okay, so Brian, which of these volunteer at the zoo is another great one. We could say to Brian, okay, which of these do you want to work on? And I'm just going to randomly choose one because you guys will never agree on anything, all 200 of you. So I'm going to say, let's do the dog walking business in his neighborhood, right? Let's just say that that's what we're going to do, is that he will, you know, create some kind of like a business with his neighbor. So he and the neighbor who like to walk the dog together will create a little dog walking business in the neighborhood. So, who's going to help them do that? Well, he and the neighbor are going to do it together. So he's got a cohort in crime there. So, what would our action plan look like? Well, our action plan would include, and you guys can put stuff into the chat if you want for this, but our action plan would include like maybe they're going to create a flyer about their dog walking business. Maybe in the beginning, they'll make it very reasonable until they can kind of like, um, you have a little bit more of a client base. They will walk around the neighborhood and give the flyer out to every family that has a dog, with the information about how to contact them and that kind of thing. And maybe they will start with somebody who they know that also has a dog that's maybe, I don't know, works during the day, and say, hey, we're home since we're doing homeschooling or whatever. We will, walk your dog during the day when you're at work. Or maybe they would start with somebody who's in need, like an elderly neighbor, and saying, would you like for us to walk your dog, one time per week, just by, showing other people. They could work with an adult to create like a good sales pitch, right? And help them with their communication or their social skills building. That would be a great thing for like a therapist to work on with them, or like a life coach or something like that, right? So we're taking somebody who's feeling really socially isolated. We're taking their strength of they have a neighbor and also they like animals, and we're turning this into something that, Brian could get really excited about. And he can also, build connections in the community, and he can make some money, and there's like a win, 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 right? And you guys just did that. You took somebody who was really isolated, and through your brainstorming, you helped them find somebody find something to do. Make a website for the dog walking. That's really cute. Or even like the Nextdoor app. That would be a good one. Is go on the Nextdoor app, because then that's people right in your neighborhood, in your community. You guys have come up with some really great ideas. So I want to thank you for that, because this process is something that you should use. You'll have the PowerPoint so you can see what this process looks like, and kind of just like walk through with your client. You can't do it without them, because they have to say the things that they like, or the things that they're interested in, what they're willing to do and what they're not willing to do. We could have spent all our time brainstorming about volunteering at a shelter, but you know what, Mary, they don't live near a shelter. That means Mary has to drive them, and that's putting more on her plate when she's already feeling overwhelmed. So that might not be the best option, you know? Um, Good job, you guys. Thank you so much. Okay, so here's some important points to consider when it comes to social supports. Is one, relationships are dynamic, and they change all the time. Today I'm your best friend, tomorrow I'm not talking to you. Today I love you, tomorrow we're in a big fight. So relationships are dynamic, and we need to keep that in mind when we're dealing with social supports. I think that's one of the biggest, I would say, barriers to professionals feeling comfortable helping people access support systems, is we as professionals, we feel like we don't have control whether or not social support or the natural support is going to come through for that person. And so we say like, oh, well, no, we can't do that, because what if that person, what if our client, like that person doesn't follow through, and then our client gets hurt by that, or feels, more lonely or more isolated. And so what I would say to you about that is, every time you've made a referral to a professional, did they always follow through for the client? The professional got a new job, didn't do what they said they were going to do. all right, and left the client frustrated. So that's sadly human nature. And yeah, we don't have control over whether a natural support is going to follow through. We also don't have control over whether a formal support is going to follow through. So that's just kind of unfortunately part of life. And we have to help people build resilience around sometimes they're going to be disappointed. Um, and also, we need to try to, as best as possible, put them in situations where they'll be successful. Right? So the way that many of us build our support systems is through shared common activities. So I am really interested in a particular club, like dancing. I'm going to go to join a club at school or join a, community Zumba class or something. I'm going to find other Zumba lovers in that dance class. And there's a greater likelihood that because we enjoy the same thing, we're going to want to spend time together and meet at Zumba class. And that's how relationships build. And so it's really important that we recognize that the people that we're working with, they need to have more than formals in their lives. They need to have people in their community that are easy to access, and so that they can become part of their local community, right? And one thing that's also really important is we're not necessarily looking for huge grand gestures. Sometimes little small gestures turn into really big things. So I'll give you a personal example is, like during COVID, pre-COVID, I traveled a ton and did training like all over the country. And then all of a sudden, literally within a day, I was like grounded. And I have a family at home and I spend a lot of time with my family, but I don't spend a lot of time with my neighbors in my neighborhood. But all of a sudden, I was like in my neighborhood and not going anywhere. So I started walking and running just to kind of get out of the house. And I would start my day with a jog and end my day with a walk and just to kind of clear my head from Zoom land. And I would walk around and because I was running at 5 o'clock in the morning, there were also the same people who wake up early who also run. And we would start by like waving hi, and then we would notice that we're kind of like running in the same direction. So eventually we started like running together. And then we would run and talk. And then it got to the point where it was like I would, text the person like, hey, I'm going out in 10 minutes, meet you there, kind of thing, or I'll pick you up on the way. And then it turned into like, hey, you want to like go run? We'll grab a cup of coffee, and whatever. And so you can see how just a small, head nod or wave turned into a friendship. And so we want people that we're working with to help them just make those small gestures. Just do the one small thing to kind of start that off, and it can turn into something bigger. You don't have to automatically walk up to somebody and say, like, hi, I'm Julie, will you be my friend? You can just start off slow. And I think that sometimes people get overwhelmed with I don't know what to say to people. Well, just start with eye contact, and then we'll talk about it as we go forward. This is an activity called My Five, which is, kind of taking that, who are the people that you most lean on, and creating a texting app. And this could be, like through your, just your cell phone texting or through like an application like Group Me or something. And you just want to like let people know, like, okay, so I'm going to ask you to be part of My Five. So if I ever need something, I could just pop it into this already created texting stream and we can support each other and help each other. And what this does is it takes away I have to ask you for something. I'm just putting information into a chat that, hey, is anybody, going to the movies? I'd love to go see this movie. Oh, I'll go. Instead of like, oh, I really want to get together with somebody, but I don't know who to get together with. You already have like the mechanism for communication, which is like half of the battle. So you work with the people that you're working with and say like, okay, who do you think you would want to be part of this inner core, this group? And ask them, can I start a little group text with you and you and you and you? So that if any of us ever need something, we can be there for each other. And it's a beautiful thing. Yeah, so if you think about who your people would be, like when I was going through my PhD program, somebody started a Group Me app, and there were 15 people that were part of my cohort, if you will. And people would just put in there, like, does anybody know what the assignment is for Thursday? Or does anybody know how to do IRB? And just having that open line of communication, there were so many questions I got answered that I never would have had the guts to like ask the professor, I'm sorry, I forgot what's due on Thursday, or can you please help me with this? I had this mechanism where I could just kind of like communicate with people, and it was so amazing. People are texting me all morning because, I'm in Florida and a lot of them are not in Florida. And so they're like, how's it going? Are you okay? What's the weather like? We've created this kind of like relationship and camaraderie. And so that you want to help the people that you're working with create something like this. Okay, so as we finish up, I just kind of want to share with you this quote, and I'm going to read it a couple of times because I want you to hear it a couple of times. Once, I'll just read it through quickly. A person in need of support looks a lot more like a person in need of treatment than a person that has support. So let me read it again, and I want you to just think about what I just said. A person in need of support looks a lot more like a person in need of treatment than a person that has support. And I want you to think about that. The people that we're working with in treatment, in mental health treatment, usually, or substance use treatment, are there oftentimes because they don't have the support systems, those protective support systems that they could get their needs met outside of us. So they needed to lean on formal systems. And so if we recognize that this to be true, then the more we help people create support systems, the less likely they are to need formal treatment moving forward. And that's our goal, is we want people to be able to have their needs met without having to go get involved in community mental health or the probation system or the child welfare system because they don't have enough support systems. I hope that this information has been really helpful for you so that as you move forward with the people that you're working with, you can be bold and be brave and be kind and continue to support the people that you're working with. So if you don't mind, just take a moment to kind of, think about this and let me know what that impression is for you when it comes to, how do we get through our biggest challenges, or, how has this couple of hours that we spent together changed your perspective on supporting people and helping people build their own support systems? What's your biggest takeaway or something like that? Just kind of put that into the chat for a minute as we kind of wind down. I know that Becca has some information to share with us in our closing remarks, but I'd love to see some information in the chat. And then also, I want to ask if you are on LinkedIn, if you would just go on LinkedIn and follow me, because I'm working on like the social media stuff. I am going to post something about our training today because I think we all need more support in our lives. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Julie. That was a great presentation. I'm going to go ahead and pull up our closing slides, and everybody can get out of here just a few minutes early and get some time back this morning. Julie, you can see people are commenting, and I hope you can see everything that everyone is saying, because your comments are always great. Everybody loves your presentations. They're always good.
Thank you guys so much, and be safe, everybody, right?
Yes, definitely. Please be safe. And so as you can see, we've included Julie's contact information so that you may contact her with any further questions. And once again, Julie, we really appreciate you and putting this on and taking the time to do these for us. It's really, really great. So I appreciate it, and I know everyone else does as well. And then just a couple more items of business before we conclude. Please see the chat panel for a link to today's survey. Additionally, when I conclude today's webinar, your browser will take you to an evaluation on FADA's website. If you want to receive CE credits or statement of credit for this event, you must complete this evaluation. You will be prompted to register or sign in to complete the evaluation. You can register at no cost. And for CEs to be reported to CE broker for Florida licensed healthcare practitioner, please be sure you included your Florida license number when you registered with our site for this event. After you register or sign in, you will be directed onward to the evaluation. Please make sure that the email address you used today when you registered for this webinar is the same email address you have listed in your FADA profile, as this is the only way to connect your attendance and your profile. You will get a second opportunity to complete the evaluation through a follow-up email later today. The evaluation will close midnight, Monday, October 3rd. We do not email statements of credit. Instead, after we verify your attendance and completion of the evaluation, a statement of credit will be generated as a journal entry within your profile 30 business days after the evaluation closes. If you are unsure how to locate a journal entry within your profile, please see our webpage as we have a frequently asked page about CEUs and other great information for you to view. And again, we'd like to thank you all for participating in today's webinar. Please stay safe. We'd like to recognize and especially thank the Florida Department of Children and Families, Office of Substance Abuse and Mental Health for funding today's education. Thank you all, and remember, the evaluation will close Monday, October 3rd. Thank you all. Thank you, Julie.
Thank you. Be safe, everybody.